Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us live. We have said it would be a really rubbish retreat if we had to just sit here and speak to the video with no one else being there. But it really is nice to have faces and smiles and feedback from people. So thank you so much for being here live. And anyone watching on catch up, thank you so much for clicking. And we hope you find benefit in this. We thought we'd start off because I know every face that I've seen so far, I think, has been around this a while. But one of the things I've
Should we
noticed.
introduce ourselves?
Yeah, I just,
Oh, sorry.
I've noticed is that if we all recognise we're all beginners, there aren't experts in this. So yeah, knowing that we listen from a place of not knowing anything really. We're all scratching the surface. So I'm Jenny Elleray, and this is Dave Elleray from Freedom Thinking. Yeah, on catch up, you wouldn't have known that. Sorry, so well done, Dave.
I'd say that.
Dave's my biggest heckler. He always interrupt me. But yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you. You heard that. Right, welcome to this 3-day event. There will be breaks running through it, so we'll probably do till about what time?
So we're going to go until 6, but we'll do a half-time break.
Yeah. So we'll have a break probably after about an hour and a half, something like that, hour and 20. We'll have a break, maybe just for 20 minutes, and then we're going to go on to 6 o'clock UK time, America. Sorry. My brain power, it took me all the brain power I had to put on the flyer, and I'm still recovering. That was over 2 weeks ago. So yeah, figure that out. 3 hours roughly. We'll be having an hour and a half's break, and then we'll be coming back on. We've got a guest speaker coming tomorrow, and his name's Godel Sefu. He's a wonderful man we did work with out in South Africa. One of the most phenomenal human beings we've met. Just an awesome human being. And the way he speaks about the principles, his understanding of the principles and his awakening, his change. He's a man who was training to be a Catholic priest. Spent from a very young age in a monastery, and he became physically disabled playing football, and he was told by the Catholic Church in South Africa, in the Congo, my apologies, that he couldn't share the word of God because he was disabled, and nobody disabled can share the word of God. So as you can imagine, Godel got a little bit upset by that and sacked it all off. But we happened to do some training out there thanks to a lady called Leanne in Johannesburg, when he had a charity called Redeeming Hope for the Disabled. And Godel just happened to sit in on one of our sessions, and there was a shift that took place within Godel, and he's passionate now. We're getting Godel on. He's wanting to get something set up in New Zealand, working with refugees. He's a refugee himself. I'll let him tell his story. But yeah, with the potential of doing some work out in New Zealand. So yeah, Godel's tomorrow. Please don't miss him. Please don't miss him.
He'll be on at 7:30 tomorrow.
Yeah, you will love this
UK
man.
time.
UK 7:30 UK time. Again, sorry, America.
I was going to say also, the thing that I loved about Goodell is he went off, and then we'd have talks with him, and he went back through all of his training and all the things he'd learned in philosophy, theosophy, and he found where it was pointing to truth.
Again, grain of
like
truth,
where there was the same message. And it's like he has eyes for truth. He's not like he promotes any way, but he sees the simplicity of pointing people to truth. And he realized, wow, this has been pointed out and pointed out and pointed out throughout time. And I love that about him. He's just, yeah, he blows my mind. And like his memory for things, and he's incredible.
He's phenomenal. Yeah, so Godel is at 7:30 UK time tomorrow evening. Again, apologies, America.
Well, any other country as well that's not America, because he's in New Zealand and he's 13 hours ahead.
Yeah.
So that'll be like 8:30 Monday for him.
Yeah. So it took a bit of brain power again to figure that one out. But we did it as far as I think we have anyway. We'll have to see if he shows up at the right time. But I think we've got it right. So all being well. So yeah, this retreat retreat, this online retreat, this fire donation retreat. And I'll quickly just cover that bit. We do this fire donation. This is mine and Jen's work. This is how we make money. We do it via donation, so everybody has access. Those who can, please donate. Those who can't, you still have access. If you can't afford to donate, what we ask is please just pay it forward with an act of kindness. But if you can afford to donate, we greatly receive it. Most people don't, if I'm honest. Most people don't. But that doesn't matter. It's part of this, the way Jenny and I are choosing to do our work. Yeah, if you wish to make a donation, you can make a donation to PayPal at info@freedomthinking.co.uk. I'll put the link in the description below. If you're watching this on catch up at some point, even if it's a year's time and you still feel like this touches you, please make a donation. It really helps Jen and I out. It keeps us putting fuel in the vehicle and paying for everything that we need to pay for as a human being existing at this time in this current Western way, putting food on the table and whatnot. We all know what the crack is. So yeah, info@freedomthinking.co.uk is also our email address if you wish to make a donation via bank transfer or something like that. Get in touch with us, info@freedomthinking.co.uk, and we can send you our bank details. We don't really want to put them up on YouTube, if you don't mind. Yeah, and also Jen and I, we work individually with people. If anybody wants to do any work with Jen and I individually, please get in touch, info@freedomthinking.co.uk. Yeah, get in touch. And without further ado, I think that's that bit covered.
Well done.
Yeah, you don't like that video.
I hate.
You see, I've come to the conclusion that when you meet somebody, it was when we were in Johannesburg, we went and we stopped in this Jewish community called Glen Hazel. There's nobody from Glen Hazel. No, there's nobody from Glen Hazel here. And we went to this. They're quite a famous Jewish couple, aren't they, in South Africa? They've written books on being partnerships and relationships and whatnot. And we went to this. Did we talk at it as well? Or did we just go and watch it? Or did we do a talk in the building?
We did the talk at the same building.
That's what it was, right? And I remember these two very extravagant, like this couple, very kind of vibrant and charismatic couple, saying, "Look at your partner. Look at who you've chosen to marry. Congratulations, you found your polar opposite." And I remember thinking, fairly true. Like, I don't mind doing this silly bit. Jenny absolutely hates it, but there you go. Opposites attract, as they say. Works in magnets. So yeah, welcome to Freedom Thinking, Awakening the Ocean of Freedom. Okay. We hope by the end of this 3 days, people get a sense of the magnitude of the title and really what it's pointing to. This isn't anything abstract. It isn't anything, oh, well done, Myra. This isn't anything that is kind of some beautiful belief. Okay, this isn't one of those, when I used to go to church, and it's just an example. When I used to go to church, I used to listen to things and I used to think religion was like all about, you just got to believe it. Well, it's a nice belief that some people hold, and I suppose to a degree it really is. This is a really crap example, but what we hope people do is they can see past the fact that this is what we're going to be sharing over this next 3 days isn't a belief. It's not something we've chosen to believe and we've kind of blindly adopted it. We've discovered something and it doesn't make us special, but we had an experience that changed our lives. We awakened the ocean of freedom within ourselves. Okay, and our hope for this over these 3 days is that by the end of the 3 days, you'll have got a sense of what that even means or feels like. That's our hope. That's why we do this work. When Jen and I were touched, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves just to begin with. We'll try and keep that brief. But when we awoke, and I call mine an awakening, because it was literally like I stood on the earth for the first time. It was the most ridiculous moment. But I was 33 years old. Yeah, we awoke something that allowed us to find a freedom to walk through life with a freedom that has never left. It's never left us. And both of us know fine well, and the reason why both of us do this work is because we know fine well that what we found lies at the heart of everyone. Every single human being on the planet, without exception. It was a very humbling moment for me to discover that I am the same as everybody else, especially when I spent my life trying to be bigger and better than everyone. But to discover I'm just the same as everybody else. I'm not special, and I don't need to be special. I can just be me. And that's special. That's special in and of itself. So, if you come here with ideas, if you come here looking to fix something, I ask, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, please listen to these words. If you've got, I see there's already some questions in the chat, that's fine.
Yeah, we encourage questions.
We absolutely encourage them, but we also, more than encouraging the questions, we encourage people to listen. Listen without agenda, please. If you've come here trying to fix something, oh, I wonder if Dave and Jen will be able to fix this for me. We won't. This isn't about fixing anything, everyone. We hope that by the end of the 3 days, this statement will become very, very clear as to what we were pointing to, and that the individual will wake up and realize there was nothing to fix. Okay, so do you want to just talk a little bit about listening?
Yeah, I think you and I had a similar experience when we came across the principles and started hearing people talk about listening and deep listening. We realized we thought we were good listeners before coming across this, and then realized we were terrible listeners, because actually what we were listening to is our own mind, our own ideas, thinking, oh, I can't wait for you to finish speaking so I can tell you this great thing about what you've said. Or you're listening to what they're saying, going, oh, I've had the same experience, I understand that. There was so much that got in the way of actually listening. And what I heard on my first 3 days with Dr. Roger Mills was there's a way in which we can listen, and it's almost beyond the words of what the person is saying. You get a sense of where someone is coming from, and it's not about you. You just get present. And actually, I think our most natural state is presence. When we clear up misunderstanding, which we hope we do over these 3 days, we fall back present. And when we're present, we're incredible listeners. When we're present, we know how to deal with what's in front of us. When we're present, we come up with incredible ideas. Like, that comes from the space of presence. So our minds will naturally wander. So don't sit there trying to control your mind. Like, you'll be listening and then suddenly start thinking about dinner, or, you know, what happened yesterday, or this reminds me of. That's natural, but just let that come and go. Let the noise come and go, and then come back. And it's just like you often speak about noticing. It really is noticing what the mind does. But one of the things that I've
That's
loved.
not a, but one sec, that's not a technique, please. I just want to clear that bit up. This isn't about noticing what the mind does. You're absolutely right, Jen, but I just want to clear up that this isn't mindfulness.
Yeah, don't make noticing a thing to
Yeah,
do.
don't that noticing what Jen just explained, just or mentioned just then, isn't something to do. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I was going to go with.
Sorry, sweetheart.
Um, so
Noticing.
no, it wasn't. Sorry.
Sorry, love.
What I started to see when I started working from this place with people was that if I just sat and listened, then something would occur to me to say. And it's a very different way of working and learning, because I'd been taught at school to listen and regurgitate information. And I'd been to different therapies and counsellors, and it was a very strange place to be like, I'm doing a call with someone and I haven't got a set thing that I need to share with them. But I know that if I get quiet and listen, there is something deep within us that knows how to share and knows what to say in the moment. And I think it took me a while to get a feel and a trust for that. And that the teaching that Sid pointed to, or the truth that he was pointing us towards, would be shared in all different ways, dependent on who I was with. So the fact of the principles, or the fact of what's before, stays the same, but the way in which I show up with people is different. And that's because when we're present with people and we listen, there's this deep intelligence that moves us. And I found myself asking questions or saying statements that I'm like, oh my God, where did that come from? Why have I said that? And then the person's like, I can't believe you just said that. So we're very good at engaging our intellect. So the nice thing is, over these 3 days, you don't need it for this conversation. It's incredible for so many things. Like, it is amazing. We just met a friend today who had a mountain bike accident, and he thought it just like pierced his skin on his crossbars. So he did the route again, and then his friend said, I've got a plaster here, let me look. He took his trousers down, it's like a bit like this, like in his leg, and I was like,
missing out of his leg.
So I can't remember why I was saying that. There was a point. That's gone. That's weird. It'll come back to me.
That's what happens. That is what happens.
You were talking about listening, Jen.
Yeah, I know that. I'm trying to think why that story came to mind. So we did the route again. Yeah, then he opened up and it was this huge wound, but I can't remember what I was saying. There was a point, and it will come back to me at some point.
It was horrible. Thanks for bringing that to mind.
Well, we saw the photo at lunchtime, so.
Yeah, bless him. But he wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, he wasn't in pain.
No, he wasn't in any pain or anything like that. It was quite an interesting thing. So, yeah, we're just asking that when you listen to this, we ask that you listen. Just listen. Just relax. Just relax. You've taken the time to turn up here. You've put the time aside. Perhaps you've clicked on this in YouTube at some other date. You've taken the time. You've taken the time for yourself. So make this time about yourself. Okay, this isn't about fixing anybody else. If you've come here to hear something to help the next person, please forget it. Forget it. Come here. Help yourself. It's the best thing you can offer yourself. It's the best thing you can offer your family. It's the best thing you can offer your friends. It's the best thing you can offer this world, is the best version of yourself. You can't offer your best version of yourself if you haven't found it, because you're too busy trying to fix somebody else. So yeah, please listen without agenda. And please note that it's in the listening, it's in the just listening. Like you'd listen to music. I think that would be a fair way to say it's like when you're listening to music, you're just listening to music. All right, please just listen to it like music. When you're listening to music, you haven't got the intellect switched in, unless you're kind of trying to figure out the beats or whatever, or the lyrics. You haven't got the intellect switched in, you're just listening. There's a relaxation that's taking place. Okay, it's in the relaxation. What is that relaxation? The relaxation is the lack of engagement with the intellect. That's what that relaxation is.
I was saying, I'm really glad that the people that sorted his leg out used their intellect.
Absolutely.
That's where I was going with that. I knew it had a purpose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. because we're not anti-intellect.
No, and I think sometimes people hear that in the principles community, that the intellect is the baddie, and I'm really on board with the intellect is incredible. It's amazing at so many things, but just for this conversation, it's not needed.
No, just relax. All right.
I was going to say, over the few days, you will hear us speak about Sydney Banks. Sydney Banks is the man who had this deep awakening insight in 1973. And we honour that man because it was through him sharing with other people and different psychologists, psychiatrists, this message spread. And I feel so grateful to be alive in a time where there was someone that saw something so deeply and managed to point people in such a simple way. So we honour that. We don't, he didn't want to be a guru. He's not our guru, but we're incredibly grateful. So we will mention him and possibly sometimes quote him. But I would encourage anybody watching this, if you get the opportunity, watch some of his videos, look at his books, because he was, his experience and then what kind of happened afterwards is an incredible story. So it's worth looking into. But we're not asking anyone to follow us or follow him. So please, I wanted to make that clear, because I think sometimes it can sound like we're like Sid. And it's like, we are so grateful to that man, because his message, in the way that I then heard it, brought me out of suffering, and I'll be forever grateful. Yeah, but I just felt that was important to say, because this isn't about following anyone or taking on someone else's belief or any kind of practice. But we will mention different teachers that have impacted us, and we'll mention Sydney Banks. But it is out of respect and gratitude.
Do you want to talk a bit about the principles?
Yeah, so I came across the principles in 2005, and at that time in the UK there wasn't a huge amount happening here, and it was at the time, the way that I learned it, was called health realization. And it was a man called Roger Mills who'd come over from America to run trainings here. And I was on a core course. They called it a core course. It was a 3-day training. And over the 3 days, the words, the 3 principles, mind, thought, and consciousness, were spoken about. And a description of the word mind could be the intelligence behind and of all life. A description of the word consciousness is awareness, the awareness that's behind and of all life. And then thought, this word of thought that we all think we know what it means. But when we're talking about the word thought, we're talking about that which creates reality. That infinite field that a potential comes out and a reality is born. So those 3 words are a description of how life takes form. And they point to what's before the form, where form emerges from. So you don't have to get hung up on those 3 words, because I came away completely changed. It changed my life, that 3 days. And I wouldn't have been able to tell you the definition of those 3 words. And I would have said to someone, I've been on a health realization course. I wouldn't have said I've been on the 3 principles course, because it wasn't called that then. And it's referred to as innate health. I've been learning about innate health. So that's the language that I might have used. But what took place within me through being pointed to these principles was that I awoken to the ocean of freedom that had always been there, that always existed, but I awoke to it. So please don't get hung up on those words. And I'd like you to talk about what that means to you, what the principles mean to you, because you might say it slightly differently. And that's the cool thing about this. The words are a guide, and they can sometimes feel inadequate. But luckily, as human beings, we can sense and feel beyond the word to what it's pointing to. And the way that I describe it might do nothing, and someone might say that is the worst explanation, and someone else it really does something. And then the way that Dave shares it could really do something for someone, and then someone else might think it's the worst. So that's why we both do talk about things quite differently, but we hope that that resonates with more people.
Yeah. No, I think when I had my experience, it was very much about becoming aware of the nature of thought. And through that experience, starting to get a sense of the magnitude of what the principles is actually pointing to. Well, principles. A principle, these three principles, the principles because they're applicable to everyone. Do you have mind? Not many people on the planet who would argue they don't. Are you conscious? Are you aware? Are you living? Not many people on the planet who would say they're not. Are you endowed with the power of thought? We're talking to everyone. Now we're talking to everyone. Now, those three words may look like a very small, insignificant point. Almost like, well, yeah, there's that, but then there's all this as well. Stick with it. And we hope that through these next 3 days, life will become so simplified. And it won't be through a belief. Hopefully, it will be through realization, insight. You know, the only way human beings grow is via insight. The only way we learn is via insight, revelation. It's the only way we grow. Through realizing. What is realizing? It's to discover something new. To discover something new that was perhaps invisible to us one moment, to then become visible the next moment. Insight. Insight. Revelation. To reveal. Something is revealed. If it was revealed, it was already there. It was just hidden. Lucia's all over baby bells at the moment. We've stopped giving her them, but she's all over baby bells. She's always hiding. She loves hiding herself. She covers herself over with a blanket, sits in the middle of the bed like this, going, "I'm hiding. Can you find me?" No, Luce. No, not at all. Where are you, Luce? Oh, how many hours have we done that for? Like the hiding and the revealing. Lucy is all over peeling things, bananas, oranges. She loves the discovery of something within. She loves it. We love it. That's why we're all here. We never changed. This is the only way that we evolve. It's the only way evolution in the physical world, like Darwin's idea of evolution, the only way evolution can ever evolve if there's a new idea as to how it needs to move. It's not random. If you look closely, you realize it's not random. It's beautifully orchestrated. And I think we'll talk about that over this next 3 days, just for anybody who may wish to hear about that. Yeah, these principles, they are pre-existing. Pre-existing, what does that mean? Mankind didn't dream them up. In fact, they dreamed up mankind, dreamt up mankind. These are pre-existing. They're not man-made. Mankind did not invent the force called mind, consciousness, or thought. Mankind did not invent it. Mankind is endowed with these powers like every other living being on the planet. They're pre-existing. They're fundamental. Another word you could use, fundamental. Fundamental to all. but they are so, or should I say, the revelation that can take place through studying and becoming aware of these facts, which is really one fact. 3 attributes to one fact. 3 faces. 3 faces of the same object. 3 attributes. When we start to become aware of them, we start to understand life. Now, I'll speak for myself, and then I'll speak from an observation. For myself, I had no understanding of life whatsoever before 2013. Or very little, should I say. Very, very little. And it was in 2013, thanks to a lady called Sue Huginson in Windermere. She's the lady who introduced me to the principles. It was thanks to Sue that I started to gain some insight, some realization about life itself. That is what we are hoping to be talking to over this next 3 days. Life itself, which is why I'm talking about, please don't come here with an agenda. If you've got an agenda, let it go quiet. Let the agenda go quiet, because we want to talk about life itself. If you start to understand life itself, your questions disappear. You realize the questions are distracting you from the truth. The devil's in the details. Never a more true word spoken. It's not in the details. It's in the expansive conversation, the expansive realization into the nature of life itself. What is life? What is this pre-existing force that mankind did not invent? But mankind is. What is alive? What is living? The closest we can come to it at the moment is artificial intelligence. But it can't feel. It can't feel. It can't fall in love. It can't worry. It can't admire. It can't realize the magnitude of beauty. It will always be lacking in comparison to ourselves. It will never have that connection, for want of a better word. I don't particularly like connection, because to talk about connection is to say something can be disconnected. Disconnection never once took place. But to discover our connection to everything, it can never know that. We can. And plenty of people around this planet have woken up to it. And the people that wake up, what do they want to do? They want to help the next people. And they go on to live a more beautiful life. Speaking to a girl this week who, I'm not religious. I'm not a religious man. But this lady found Christianity again after many years. And she said, my life is so much more full knowing that God is a living part of my life. Now, I get that. She calls herself Christian. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. Doesn't matter what religion you are. Still applicable. Are you mind, consciousness, thought? Of course. Doesn't matter if you're atheist. Is the other word agnostic? Is that another word? Agnostic. Doesn't matter. Are you still mind, consciousness, thought? Of course. Doesn't matter. Are you a quantum physicist? Yes. Okay, fine. Are you mind, consciousness, thought? Are you endowed with that property? Of course. Can't do your work without it. Doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist? Of course. It doesn't matter who you are or what you believe. That's why we're hoping that this conversation will unite all of that and everyone, so that we can start to understand the nature of life and realize our ocean of freedom, and understand the limitations that are the things that are truly holding us back from the feeling of freedom, the realization of freedom. Everybody's already free. There's plenty of people want to escape the matrix, as they call it. Learn to understand the matrix. You won't find it outside of yourself. If you look outside, you're looking at the illusion. This is a discovery into the magnitude and the friggin' immense splendor that every single one of us is. Every single one of us is, without exception. Without exception. I don't care what diagnosis we've been given. I don't care what ideas we carry about ourselves, social anxiety or ADHD, any of this stuff. I'm not bothered by any of that. You are magnificent beyond comprehension. And you have to be, because you're here. You exist. So these principles that Sid, I'm really grateful that we live in a time when somebody had this realization, and it would seem to go out en masse without much hindrance, in all honesty. The only hindrance came from people's interpretation of it, a lot like probably Jesus's words or Muhammad's word or Buddha's word, Krishna's. You know, they get hindered by mine and Jenny's conversation. They get hindered by words. They get hindered by interpretation. But Jen and I, we're going to do our absolute best to speak from experience, not from interpretation. And in doing so, hoping that will clear up any misunderstanding, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I'm just grateful that we live in a time when we can actually go and listen, type in Sid Banks into YouTube, type in 3 principles into YouTube, and you can actually hear the man speak for himself. Get a feel for him, see if you like him. Some people don't, it's fine. Some people don't like me, some people don't like Jen. It's cool, all right with that. But yeah, we live in a time when somebody had a realization and could speak in clarity, with clarity, in language that I personally understand. Not through translation, not through reading scrolls or texts or the word according to, but through direct experience. We live in that time, and the time is right. Because people are curious. People are hungry. They're hungry to feel fulfilled now. They've done it. They've been out into the world. They've earned money. They've got the job. They got the partner. They got the house. They've got the car, whatever. They got the qualifications. They've done all that. Got promotions, and they still feel empty. people are ready to feel fulfilled. So hopefully, again, these words will start to make sense over this next 3 days. And we'll start to realize the magnitude of the nature of mind, consciousness, thought. They're all the same thing. 3 attributes of the same thing. But as we start to understand it, as we start to gain insight into it, we start to realize the 100% nature of it. There is nothing but. Many people have a spiritual experience when they start to realize these principles. What would that look like? Well, that would look like a deep realization of love, of wordless space, of an experience that would take place whereby the individual experiences something they can't comprehend actually exists. Because what we're talking about is the hidden dimension of ourself. There is a hidden dimension. It's hidden. You can't see it with the eyes. You can't see it with the senses. It's hidden. It's hidden from our everyday experience. People wake up to it, and you notice if you ever speak to people who've awoken to it, they will have very similar experiences to the next person who woke up. And you start to realize that wherever you go in the world and you speak to people who've had experiences, they speak the same kind of speak the same kind of thing. They describe the similar kind of thing. Is that just chance? Is that just lots of people all kind of tuning into the same conspiracy against the rest of the people? Or is it that there is this space within ourself that people have the capacity to tap into, to realize is there and can change their life? And they don't have to go anywhere. There's nowhere to go. There's no time to go. There's no time for it to exist in. When you find it now. You find it here and now, wherever you are, whenever you are. Because there is nothing but that. For myself, I had no interest in spirit. I had no interest in spirituality. I just wanted to have a nicer life. And I was fed up to the back teeth of what I was experiencing with my life. I was done with it. And it got to the point where I was going to commit suicide. I've been diagnosed with chronic depression and chemical imbalances of my brain that I would need medicating for. I was told I will never get rid of my chronic depression, but I may be able to find ways to deal with it, is what I was told by psychiatrists. I was told that. Nonsense. God bless those people. What a death sentence to give people. But thankfully, it's completely false. And I don't care who's listening. I'll speak to anyone. Everyone has at their core of their being absolute perfect sanity, health. I like the words health realization. I really like that. Health realization. Well, to realize something means it must already be present. And then you get to see it. Health realization, like psychological health realization. To realize you are always well. But we didn't understand the nature of reality. We didn't understand the nature of life. Sorry.
I love it. We came up with a few ideas before. Maybe start with this and maybe do that. But I love that it will be a complete free
Oh,
for
it always is.
getting a flow, and yeah.
It just always is.
Something you just said, someone had asked me that question this morning. I was doing a call and I said, have you got any exceptions or anywhere where you kind of, there's something about this you think, oh, I'm not sure. And they said, well, actually, I've got a physical health condition that I've had since birth. So that is true. I have got that. And I thought it was a really good thing to bring up, because you may have something physically wrong with you, but we're talking about at our essence, we cannot be broken, and we're not just this form. So we're not saying you can't have like health issues or just to ignore them because it's all thought. Like if you need to seek medical help or whatever kind of help for a physical thing, do that. But what we're pointing to and what I spoke about was, it is true, but that's not on your mind every minute of every day. So it doesn't exist for you in those moments. So it's not to say it's that you don't still have this thing, but when you bring it to mind, it's in your reality, it's what you're thinking about, you'll experience it. When it falls off your mind, it's not in your experience and you're just in whatever you're doing. And I've had similar experience where I had I caught a parasite when I was in South America traveling, and it took from the September through to the January until I got diagnosed with what it was. And at times it would be all that was on my mind and it would be the most painful thing and I was worrying about it. And other times I'd be watching a movie, hanging out with friends, it would fall off my mind and I was just in whatever I was doing. So the physicality of it existed, but not for me in that moment, because it wasn't my reality or my experience, because my experience, our experience, is thought 100% of the time, which is how people would have all probably had the experience of not feeling very well, but then got distracted by something. And actually, because their focus wasn't on the feeling of not feeling well, it didn't exist for them. Even when I've had really bad, like cold or flu-y stuff, I've kind of got lost in a movie or been with Lucia and she's been like cracking us up. And I just forget how ill I feel and I'm just laughing and present. And then I'm like, oh God, no, actually, I feel really, really ill. So it is making that distinction. We're not saying it's all just thought, so don't do anything about it. If you need medical attention,
go and see a doctor.
Yeah, go and see a doctor. You had said about doing a brief, how you came across this. Are you still thinking that's where you wanted to go, or not so much?
Very brief. I suppose somebody once said to me, said, so you know this cult you're part of? I said, how did you know about the cult? He said, yeah, this cult you're part of. I said, why do you think it's a cult? He went, but it's clearly a cult. I said, how is it a cult? He was like, well, it's talk about spiritual stuff and all that. I'm like, mind is spiritual. Pre-existing is another word you could use. Fundamental, another word you could use. Consciousness, exactly the same thing. Thought, exactly the same thing. I said, why do you think it's a cult? He said, well, I'm in a cult. I said, oh, what's your cult? He said, Buddhism. I said, great. I said, no, ours isn't a cult. It's simply a discovery of life. That's it. He said, yeah, but that's what Buddha was pointing to, and Buddhism's a cult. I said, fine. If that's the way you want to see it.
I've never ever heard anyone call Buddhism a cult either.
Yeah, he called it a cult. I said, fine, if that's the way you want to see it. And he said, and what qualifies you? What qualifies you to do this work that you do? I said, my experience. He said, have you got any qualifications? I said, yeah, I can use a chainsaw and I can use a rope and harness and I can feed a wood chipper. So that's pretty much my qualifications. He's like, yeah, but you need to be a psychologist. You need to be a psychiatrist. And no, I don't. No, I don't. It was my experience of life that showed me something so simple that I could help the people who were struggling in the psychological psychiatric system. Help them escape it. I have a deep respect for psychologists and psychiatrists because I have a deep respect and love for anybody who is trying to help the next person. Psychology and psychiatry did not help me, and I understand why it couldn't help me. It was taking me further into my suffering to try and find the freedom. It was taking me further into what I hope you will start to understand as the illusion of life, thinking that I would escape the illusion. It could never do that. That conversation could never do it. It was taking me back into the past, which doesn't even exist, and trying to tell me that the past has the power over me now. Trying to find the point in time when Dave went wrong and malfunctioned, in the hope that if I can see where I went wrong, I could somehow come to terms with it. Fair enough. Fair enough. But nothing in comparison to realizing the nature of life. To see that everything that I am experiencing is ultimately an illusion. That was the ultimate freedom. The ultimate freedom that I didn't know existed. That I didn't know I was searching for. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in the psychiatric system. I was medicated, blah, blah, blah. But it was only when I came across Sid through Sue that I heard somebody for the first time talking common sense. I'm like, this man's talking common sense. I can't argue with a single thing he's saying. And there was this kind of feeling within me that I kind of I didn't recognize it at the time, but it was kind of fresh. It was new. It was kind of almost excited, I suppose, almost excited to kind of, oh, there's hope. Hope's a wonderful thing. Have the idea that perhaps there's some hope that I could be better. Damn right. Everyone can be. But you won't find it by looking back in your past. You see, if you look at the reality that we see, and I'm talking about this here right now, look around you, take a moment, look around you. Notice things. Just notice things. Just for a moment, just notice things. Notice where you are. Notice who you're with. Notice you're on this Zoom call. What you will notice is that wherever you focus your attention, you will get a brief experience of it until you shift your attention to something else. If you hold your attention on a certain something for a while, you will have an experience of that thing for a while. Films, an hour and a half, 2-hour film. Hold your attention on it. You get to experience the whole film. Briefly glance at a cup or a clock. You'll briefly have a momentary glimpse of and an experience of that. Because wherever our consciousness goes, we have an experience of it. Just notice. Now, if we are being encouraged to look back in the past, to focus our attention on the past, what happens? We have an experience of the past. We bring the past back to life, right here, right now. So if we are being encouraged to look at our traumas, trauma, what is a trauma? What's the definition of trauma? Well, part of the definition of trauma is it's something that's already happened. Trauma in and of itself implies past event. Something that's already happened. Happened. Not happening. Not happening here and now, but happened. If we are being encouraged to study what happened, what happens? Like looking at the film, or like looking at the clock, or like looking at the person next to you, you get to have an experience of it again. And the whole thing we're trying to create is the experience of not having that experience over and over again. But what are we encouraged to do? Go looking at it. Keep looking. Keep looking. Keep looking. Keep looking at your pain. Keep looking at the pain. What happens? We keep on experiencing it. But we are encouraged to do that by people who wholeheartedly believe that by studying suffering, you find peace and joy. It doesn't make sense. It never made sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. This conversation, hopefully, again, over this next 3 days, you will start to join the dots. Start to realize the truth of things that perhaps you've heard before, but hear it in a different way. Realize it in a different way. Everything we are talking about will be in the now. No other time, because nothing else exists. There is only the now. If you look closely, what you'll see that the past is a ball of thoughts. It's a bunch of thoughts. We call them memories. What is a memory? Well, it's a thought. Nothing more, nothing less. If you look at the future, what you would realize is what is it? What is the future? Where is the future? Is the future here? Is it here now? Of course not. It's the now, here now. Is the past here now as well? Check it out. Check it out for yourself. See if this is true. Is the past here now? Is the future here now? Does it exist? Please don't believe anything Jenny or I say. But seriously, check it out. Look around you. Where is the past and where is the future? When I was going through this, I was like, what about castles? What about this photograph? This photograph. This proves the past exists. No, it's a photograph in the now. It's a photograph that exists in the now. We're not saying nothing has happened. We're saying everything you experienced. But we're also saying it doesn't exist now. We need to come to some kind of logical reconciliation with life itself. And hope. Sorry.
I remember hearing it described. Keith and Valda filmed an intensive that they did for 4 days with someone, and the person had allowed it to be shared with people who are learning to facilitate. And I remember the lady needed to talk quite a lot, and there'd been a lot of trauma, a lot of things happen in her life. And then I just remember Valda it was so heartfelt and it was so quiet. She just said to her, I'm sorry, I haven't got a time machine. I can't take you back and change any of that. I can't change what's happened. She said, but there's something I would like now to share with you that will help you move forward in life in a completely different way. And it just felt like the most gentle thing. And you could just see this lady's face kind of relax, and then she started to listen. Because I think sometimes people can hear it that we're saying it didn't exist or it didn't happen, but there's a respect that people go through all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And doing this work, you sometimes hear about people's past and you think, bloody hell, how did you live through that? But the fact of what Sid was pointing to is if you've got the person in front of you and then they did live through it, they did make it. And innocently, often what we then do is relive things over and over again. We relive past trauma in the moment. We bring it back to life because we don't know any better. And we've kind of been taught in culture that that somehow is going to find peace, like you said. But you see how innocent that is, because we're just trying to feel better. And we think that through somehow, if we keep looking at it, somehow we're magically going to feel better. And no one ever said to us, oh no, it's a shift of focus away from that is where you'll start to find peace of mind, insight, quiet, all the things you've been looking for.
And it's not so much that is, when, you know, we're not talking about some people would call it avoidance. We're not talking about avoidance. We're talking about explaining the nature of reality. Some people have said to us, oh, this is spiritual bypassing. Bypassing what? What's he bypassing? Oh, you want to take the long way around? Go for it. Go for it. Off you go. I'll see you there. It's not spiritual bypassing. It's not avoidance. It's awakening to what's yours. It's awakening to what you're entitled to. It's awakening to what you were born with. So much kind of new age crap floating around.
In your opinion.
My opinion. In my opinion.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Legal asterisks. Yeah, in my opinion. But no, it's not. It's about, why wouldn't you want to know? Why wouldn't you? Would it not make sense that if we want to have a more beautiful life, we should understand what life, start to gain insight into what life actually is and how it works? Would that not make sense? Wouldn't that be a really good place to start? It would make sense to me. If we want to have a more beautiful, joyous life, let's take a moment to stop looking at what it's created as, what it shows up as. Like, you ask people, what is life? And they'll go, oh, life's going to work. It's the kids. It's taking the kids to school. It's, oh, life's a bitch and then you die, isn't it? They'll give you all this stuff. But no, what is life itself? Because when you start to look in that direction, you're not looking outside at the reality that you've created. You are starting to go before the reality that you've created. And what we discover is there is something there. There is something there before the reality that we experience. Wouldn't that make sense? Before this very experience we're each having now, right here, right now, in order to have this experience, there must be something there for this experience to be born from. That's what I'm interested in. I used to be really interested in the experiences that I was having, the things that have happened. I was really interested in that because I didn't know any better. I was really interested in my fears, my anxieties, myself, how I appear to other people, how I appear to myself. I was really interested in all that kind of stuff. What other people thought of me. That was the kind of thing I was really interested in. But no, my focus is now different. My focus now is I'm interested in what is it before the formation of this very reality that I get to encounter. What's that? What is this presence? What is my life? What is life? Who am I?
I think one of the things you start to notice is it's like you've lived life like unconsciously. You've just lived, you've reacted, and then you think you're this kind of person, so when that happens then you act like this, and we live very unconsciously. And I think that I remember on that very first 3 days of learning about this, Roger speaking about, it's about raising your level of conscious state. That's the words he used. Raise your level of conscious state. And I remember someone saying, you know, another word could be awareness, because I think, you know, for me at 23, I hadn't really been around people talking about consciousness, and I'd read a few books, but suddenly awareness felt something I could get a feel for more. Okay, raise my level of awareness, raise my level of understanding. And through a new understanding, things look different. And I started to see how unconsciously I used to live out of beliefs, stuff that I'd learned, as people call it, programming, conditioning. And it's so innocent, because when we don't see it, we're just unconsciously having a thought, living out of it, thinking it's true. But the reason I love the principles is because it helps raise our level of consciousness. It helps unconscious beliefs start to either become present, so we get not present, visible. Suddenly what we've been living out of becomes visible, and you're like, wow, that's how I see the world. No wonder it looks like that. Or it just falls away and you start showing up different. So I think I have loved how much unconscious thought or conditioning has fallen away from me. But I know that I'm still living out of unconscious thought and belief all the time, because that I haven't seen yet. But I feel like there's an awareness and there's an openness to seeing something different. And the other way that Roger described it is that your feeling is the guide. You start to get a feel for when I'm coming from a fearful unconscious belief, because generally those ones that catch us out are the fearful, frightening, kind of trying to keep ourselves safe beliefs. And when am I just present in the moment? And it's different, it feels different. And suddenly I realized that the feeling states that I'd lived out of, anxiety, shyness, depression, worry, they were all trying to wake me up. Like, you're really off course here. You're really getting caught up in the illusion. You're really caught in belief. You're really caught in your character. You're really caught in your personality. You're really caught in the creation, in the form of things. And it's almost an invitation or a wake up to, oh, what is that thing that Dave was speaking to? There's something before all of that. There's something before all of that. And that place, that space, the way that Roger described it, is the uncontaminated space. He said, because we contaminate our minds with all kinds of thoughts. And I thought it was a strange word at the time, but I kind of get what he was pointing to now. And then we get more opportunity to have new thought that guides us in a completely different direction. But for some reason, as human beings, we seem to, you often say, better the devil you know. There's certain ways that we think and certain beliefs that we're unwilling to go of, even though we know that they're hurting us. And there's a game that they often play with kids when they're learning about the principles of hot potato. If someone threw you a hot potato, what would you do? And they say, well, drop it. And it makes total sense. But we start to notice when we look, there's so many beliefs that we know are not helping us, do not serve us, potentially are harming us, but we're unwilling to let them go. And the temptation then is to focus all our attention on that belief and try and change it. And from my experience, that doesn't work, because I'd focused almost 10 years on my eating disorder. I knew it didn't help me. I knew it wasn't good for me. I knew I shouldn't do it. And I focused 10 years on therapy, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, kinesiology, healing, all different modalities. But it was all about getting rid of that thing that I knew wasn't. And then I came across the principles. I was like, no wonder this is getting bigger, more terrifying. Like, all I've done is focus on those things. And I think it can sometimes seem counterintuitive to us to not look at what we think the problem is, because it seems that somehow we're ignoring it or we're bypassing it. But what I have loved is that in a shift of focus or attention to just the day, the moment, where we are, doing things I enjoyed, when it fell off my mind, I started to get insight and new thought around it. Helpful ways to communicate, helpful ways to see old thought in completely different light. I stopped needing to protect myself with all these beliefs and ideas that really weren't serving me. And I think we're very lucky we can get to look at our lives like, what's our life like? That's how we kind of see it. Is the way that I'm thinking serving me or not? And I remember someone saying, you're very welcome to pick it all up back up again if you want. You can start thinking negatively about yourself. You can start thinking about weight. You can start thinking about, is there at any point if you want to pick it back up again? You're not losing it. You can do that. But when you step into another way of seeing and being, you're like, why would I do that again? So then when sometimes, those thoughts do come back in, you're less tolerant of them. You're like, oh God, I'm not going to go there again. But I think people used to think this was kind of pointing to something true, but then there was the unconscious. The unconscious is still thought that we are not aware of, we're not conscious of. And if we can be open to letting some of that go or seeing something different around it and then getting on with our lives, we're likely to have some kind of insight or shift around it. But what if we go looking for what we think the problem is, or we go looking for what that thought is that created it, it's just you're going down the rabbit hole because it's infinite. I remember someone saying, I can't even remember who it was on a conference, if you want to feel upset, you could go looking for something to feel upset about, and all of us will be able to find something in our lives, something from our past, something from our relationship, something from work. But generally we kind of know that's not that helpful. And I think often people think, okay, now I have to think positively. It's like, it's not about positively thinking. It's about being aware that the way that you think creates your life. The way that you think creates your reality, your experience. So we can be wiser. I ended up feeling like, wow, I have some choice in life. I'd felt such a victim of my own mind and a victim of out there and people. And I think within this conversation, the victim within us dies. And the true us, I think Sid described it as the true dreamer, wakes up. When the true dreamer wakes up and knows that it's a dream, and then you go back into your dream, it's a very different experience. And I'm quite lucky. I often have dreams where I wake up within my dream and know I'm dreaming. And then I get some sort of autonomy within my dreams. And the strangest thing is, still within my dream, I sometimes still go down the scary bit or the not nice bit just to see what happens. And that interests me. I'm like, wow, like I had the choice to like make it all nice and that not really have happened, but I still choose to experience what that is because I think we're here to experience. And the lady that introduced us to Godel said that someone had said to her, you know, when you have an ECG, what's that like? Like, what does it look like? And said, oh, it's like this. And she said, yeah. And what happens when it flatlines? And she's like, oh, you're dead. And she's like, right. She said, that's a bit like experience, you know, we have our ups and we have our downs. And then when it flatlines, it means we're dead. And she said suddenly something to do with the principles clicked in. And she said it was like a penny dropped that she felt had been sort of on the verge of dropping. And she's like, yes, there are going to be ups and downs in life. Sid himself would say it's a contact sport. We're going to love people and lose them. We're going to have a job, not have a job. We're going to have finances. We're going to have stuff happening in the world that the way that we live today, we get instant access on the internet, on the television, to all kinds of things around the world that otherwise we'd have not known about. Bombarded with information. But I feel like I'm more discerning where I put my attention and my focus. And that's something that we all can wake up to. That's something that we all have autonomy. There's so much, we have so much more power than we realized. And I think so many people that we speak to have felt powerless in their life. Like they are a victim of circumstance. Well, this happened in my childhood, so I can't ever get over it. What Sid brought was this, regardless of circumstance, regardless of the past, you have the ocean of freedom within you now. It exists within you now. It never went anywhere. It can get covered up by belief, whether conscious or unconscious. But I also encourage people to start to see the times in their day when whatever it is that they think is an issue or a problem falls away because they're just in their day doing what they're doing. That's something I think I really gained gratitude for. Something that would seem like a huge deal or a huge problem didn't exist for me in so many moments of my day until I thought it back into being, and then it felt like everything again. Because in the moment, that's all that existed for me. And I think it started to make me laugh, like this certain thing that I've wanted to get rid of and not wanted to think about quite naturally falls off my mind at some points. But I didn't have any gratitude for that at all, because it seemed to come back. But that's something I feel you get eyes for. You're like, actually, whatever we think it is that we're trying to get rid of, anxiety, depression, worry, allow yourself to see all the times you're not in that. Because we are very dynamic creatures. We go in and out of different feeling states. And I think that's why we've loved watching Lucia, because she is so dynamic and so in and out. And doesn't care, like I was saying to the lady I was speaking to earlier, like she doesn't care if she's in the middle of the supermarket and her experience is one of crossness, that she's been told something, or we haven't been able to get the right trolley that her and her dolly can sit in. She's furious. She's just furious. She's not like, everyone's looking at me, I shouldn't be furious. She's just furious until she's not. And I've loved experiencing and watching that, because you would think, looking at her, that the world was coming to an end in those moments. That there's something so beautiful about watching a young child. That it's not that they have always a beautiful experience, it's that they allow their mind to get come and go. It comes and it goes, it comes and it goes. And they don't hold on to things in the same way. But we soon learn to do that. It's all right, we all learn at some point. This is a new diagram.
Oh no, it's just come to me. It's probably crap, but let's go for it.
Can you see it in the video?
Can you see this?
It's not very light. Can you put one of those lights on it?
We can't see it too clearly, Jen.
All right. That's your eyes, Cole.
That's right.
Is it? No, probably in your eyes. It's probably our dirty camera. And is that right? So basically what I've drawn is I've drawn two cars crashing, red car, blue car. If he's interested. But I've drawn four faces, and it's just to kind of clarify something.
Mm.
When we're talking about our experiential reality, we're not talking about circumstance. When we're saying we create our reality, we're not talking about outside. Okay, we interact with the outside. The outside is there. I'm looking outside at trees now, and a couple of pigeons sat in the trees. That's circumstance. Okay, and I want to kind of make a distinction between circumstance and experience. Okay, circumstance is what is taking place. Experience is how you experience it. Okay, we are not saying, somebody once said to me, so are you saying that if I'm on an aeroplane that's crashing, it's just a thought? No, your aeroplane's crashing. How you experience it is whatever you dream up about it. However you think about it, whatever occurs to you in that moment is how it will appear to you. That is what's creating your experience. Because if you look at what reality is, you'll realize it's actually an experience. The only thing you ever get to experience is your own experience. So in this diagram, we've got two cars crashing here. The circumstance outside. And the experience inside. Can you possibly have an experience outside of yourself? Anything. Can you experience anything outside of yourself? The experience of the car crash is taking place within ourselves. The experience and the circumstance are different. Circumstance is what is happening. The experience is whatever we're experiencing about it. But the only way we could even know the car has crashed is because of experience. We've spent our lives staring blindly at experiences, at circumstances, and thinking that the circumstance is the creation, is the origin of our experience. What happened out there, what happened to my body, what happened at that time, is what is creating my experience, is what created my experience at that time. It's an interaction, it's not a creation. You see, the only place experience can possibly be created is from within ourselves. And in this picture, I've drawn four faces. One looks a bit shocked. One looks quite excited to see a car crash. One's really upset. One's really upset that there's been a car crash. And one's just, whatever. Actually looks like he's a bit high. But nonetheless, highness is an experience. He's high. But no, he's just kind of nonchalant. Oh, whatever. At least it's not me, whatever. So you've got, and you can see this. You look at your life, you look at your life, and you'll realize, look at it. You'll see that everybody's having a different experience of the same circumstance. Okay, so if it was circumstance that was the origin of the reality that we encounter, then would it not make sense that once that circumstance has taken place, everybody must, by virtue of the fact that this circumstance is the origin of our experience, would it not mean that everybody would have to see it the same way? But we don't. We know that. We don't. We all experience it differently. Why is this? It's because we're all creating different experiences. We're all living into our own separate realities. This is why there's war on the planet. It's why people don't see eye to eye, why we have arguments, and why we have language. There'd be no need for language if we all saw the same reality. There'd be nothing to talk about. We'd never have developed language. We develop language because we all see separate realities. But what does that point to? It points to that reality is taking place from within ourselves, not being thrust upon us by outside circumstance. Now that includes work, children, partners, relationships, money, weather, war, all of it. As controversial as that sounds, and I don't mean to offend. Somebody has said to us in the past, you cannot say that. What about people at war getting shot at? I said, but I've known soldiers who have felt so alive when they're being shot at, who've gone in seeking that experience again because they felt so alive being shot at. I could see everything. I could see the moisture on the grass. I could hear everything. I was so ultimately aware. It was phenomenal. They weren't scared. They were in utter awe. And they were being shot at. But we also know that there's people who are terrified whilst they're being shot at. And everything in between. So I just wanted to clear something up. Don't confuse circumstance with experience. Circumstance, that can be anything. It can be the car crash. It can be what happened then. It can be what the weather's doing. It can be work. It's all circumstance. All circumstance. Other people, circumstance. Don't confuse circumstance with experience. We're concentrating on experience because that's the only thing we're actually experiencing anyway. That's the only place we'd even know the cars were crashed, is via experience. You see, we've looked outside of ourselves. We've looked to circumstance for the origin of our experience. And where's it got us? It's got us absolutely nowhere as a species, not in terms of finding peace and psychological health. Look at the psychological illness epidemic, they call it, that we're facing at the moment. Why? Because we're always looking at circumstance, believing that the circumstance is the origin of our experience. We will never find peace as long as we are looking at the illusion. I'm not saying the cars crashing are the illusion, but the idea that that has the power to create the experience that we encounter, whether it would be positive or negative, as we may choose to call it, it is neither. That's something we create for ourselves as well via experience. That's something we're making up, whether something is positive and negative. To this fella here, that's quite a positive thing. I can go and tell me mates all about this. Oh, this brilliant car crash earlier on. It was great. They kicked off afterwards, and this man would go and go, so this really shocking thing take place today. And this bloke would go and go, I saw this terrible thing happen today. It reminded me of this, that, and the other. And this bloke would probably forget to tell his mates because he's stoned. But I just wanted to highlight this point. Experience. Your experience is your reality. My experience is my reality. And Jenny and I have shared a lot of time together in the last 10 years. And to this day, sometimes our individual experiences baffle the shit out of each other. Why would that bother you? Well, why would that bother you? Well, because it does, all right. Well, it makes no sense. But in our experiences, in our worlds, we're all living in our own unique expressions of reality. And that's so important to know. So much of my suffering was born from what other people think. Do other people think about me? What do other people think about me?
Put a light back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What do other people think about me? You know, and the idea that other people they're better at this world than I am. All these ideas, I mean, you could go on forever, but the point is, nobody's getting life wrong. They're creating an experience of life. That's a controversial statement as well, which many people get upset by. People are not getting life wrong. Let us expand on that over the 3 days. But everybody on earth is this magical center point for experience creation. They are creating reality. They're creating their experience of life. And this is done via the principles, mind. It's done from the mind. It's done from awareness. You're unaware there's been a car crash. It won't be in your reality. You won't even know it existed. So it will not be in your reality. Consciousness. However you think about it will determine the outcome of how your experience feels, how it looks to you, the flavor it takes on. But everybody's looks real to them. Everybody's reality looks real to them. You can't escape that point. My reality looks so convincingly real to me. It's so easy for me to assume I'm getting life right and everybody else is getting it all wrong. Why? Because my reality looks real to me. Share it with another person, see what happens. Can quite quickly kick off.
But I think also, if you share it with someone and they seem to see it the same as you, you sometimes think, oh, it must be a bit more true.
Yeah.
I think we've got to be careful of that, because there's whole groups of people that think in certain ways, and just because there's more people that say that it's true doesn't make it more true.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so when we get social support, we're kind of a bit more like justified, like, yeah, no, I am right. But
yeah,
it's
and how easy it is to seek that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw a little quick diagram. When we're talking about experience, we're not talking about circumstance. When we're talking about we create reality, we're not talking about we created the car crash. You know, you could have been mindlessly walking down the street and the car crashes. You didn't create the car crash. However, you do create the experience that you have of it. Your awareness draws your attention to it. And then whatever you experience is, whatever is coming to you via mind, via thought, in that moment about that circumstance. This is how it works. It's very, 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 very simple. Should we take a break?
Yeah, I should think if we take a 20-minute break. So in the UK, that'll be coming back at 5. And everyone else,
It's still 20 minutes all
still
over
20
the world.
minutes.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, welcome back, everyone. We've got a fresh brew. Cole, you just quickly, you left us a message. Can you just expand a little bit on your message? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it just underlies for me that the amount of community groups that I've done, and we've done an online one before, as you know, and it's just that the amount of times you can talk about a particular subject, in this case, creating your own reality, and I hadn't realized that I never really got it. But with that, sorry,
Sorry,
but with that diagram, bingo, the light went on. It's just incredible that I can hear the same thing over and over and over again, whatever it might be around this conversation. And I think, oh yeah, but I didn't really get it. But now, on that particular fragment or sequence, if you will, bingo, the penny dropped. So thank you. And thank you, Jenny, for your input as well.
Thanks, Cole.
I love it because like you've never drawn that diagram before.
No, I haven't.
I think that's the thing. Like, and it was perfect for you in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And well, it made me realize two things. That you know, like people learn in different ways. I'm clearly a diagram person.
Hey, there was no diagram drawn when you had your experience in Ambleside.
Well, no, I get that. No, but that's in a sense that's a different kettle of fish because that's the whole experience going in there. But it makes me think you've got that Venn diagram behind you, and to me that's worth more than a Monet or a Picasso or anything like that. Do you know what I mean?
We'll send it to you.
You can have that, Cole.
Hey, yeah, I'll hold you to that, mate. I'll hold you to that.
A lady called Lisa once bought one of my diagrams.
I know. I watched it. Yeah.
Well, I was just actually thinking that I love all these diagrams, so I think we should come up with a price and we'll buy them all. All from the things, we'll pick and choose them, but we'll buy them. Another nice little contribution for you.
Thank you. Bless you.
Yeah.
Right.
We should do an auction. Let's just all auction.
Yeah, an auction. Yeah. An auction.
Like
Well,
eBay.
this is a seascape, everyone.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, we're thinking I might have to. I'm just going to do another diagram because we might refer back to this throughout the 3 days. But so if we get it out of the way in the first part,
It's kind of a bit of an inspiration for the title as well, because this is something that you have seen and shared in this way for a long time.
yeah, this isn't anybody who's followed us. You know, chances are you've come across this diagram. Dan, I know you've come across this diagram, but I think it's worth sharing. Yeah, I'm going to talk my way through because we might put this out as a podcast as well. So I'm going to excuse me for talking my way through it. And forgive me if you can't quite see this. I'll explain it. And how this metaphor came about was we're running a retreat in the Lake District and we were stood on the side of Grasmere. Sorry, love you. Grasmere. And my friend Sasha was with me. And Sash, I love Sash. Million questions at a million miles an hour were being fired at me. What about this? What about this? What did the principal say about this? Blah, blah, blah. I have this thought. I have that thought. And I was like, whoa. Stop. I said, you're missing it. You're missing it. We're not. Please don't be distracted by this thought and that thought. And I stood there and I looked around. I thought, what can I use as a metaphor? And I realized I was stood next to Grasmere. And I said to Sash, Sash, look out onto the water. I said, what do you see? And she said, waves. I said, tell me about the waves. She said, well, they come and go. We know a wave isn't permanent. A wave comes and it goes back to where it comes out of the water. It takes form in the shape of the wave and then goes back to water. She says they appear to flow. They look like they're moving up or down the lake or across the lake. There's the movement within the wave. I said, carry on. She went, well, suppose they're all different sizes. They all look different. Yep. They all look different. I said, what about that wave over there though, Sash? That wave over there and that wave over there. I said, are they made of anything different? She went, no, they're both water. I said, right, they're both water. I've drawn, I want to grasp me here. I want this to be an ocean. And the reason why I want it to be an ocean is because look at, where does an ocean begin and where does an ocean end? You know, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean aren't separate. They're just geographical names we give in order so we can break up a globe into pieces so we can talk about them. We can understand where each place is. We can know where we're talking about. So if we say England or Scotland, we know roughly which part of the world we're talking about, even though it's all the same landmass. Now you can go to Cumbria, Essex, or Lancashire, or
You were saying like it used to be Westmoreland and Cumberland, and so the same landmass had different names at different times. And
Cumbria used to be Westmoreland, Lancashire, and Cumberland.
then Myra was saying, you know, the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America, so it's just been renamed. It's the same bit of water, but it's just been renamed.
Yeah, and Great Britain's first recorded name was Albion. So it's like these are just words that we use to kind of create. But if you look at an ocean, we create an identity so we know where we're talking about. My apologies, I didn't finish off my sentence. But if you look at an ocean, where does it begin and where does it end? Is the Indian Ocean really separate from the Arctic Ocean? Is the Indian Ocean really separate from the Atlantic? Is the Atlantic separate from the Pacific? You see, you realize you could jump in the water, whichever country you're at, unless it's some landlocked country, get in a river, swim down till you find the sea, and you can swim around the globe non-stop. You could do it countless times if you really fit. You could certainly sail it, should I say. You could sail round over and over again, no beginning and no end. The water has no beginning and no end. Here we have an ocean. And I've drawn waves all over this ocean. There are some big waves and there's some little waves, but waves nonetheless. You know, a tsunami that can take out Fukushima, or like the Boxing Day tsunami we saw in 2006, was it? That was water. When you go down the seaside and you watch the little waves roll in and see the kids playing in the sea, it's the same thing. It's still water. It doesn't matter whether it's a tsunami or whether it's a ripple. It's water. And you only get the waves on the surface. There's a man on here called Chris. He's watching right now, and I remember doing this diagram. Chris is a pretty competent diver. He's dived all over the world. He has spent countless months underwater, not all at the same time, but throughout his life. I don't know, years perhaps, over the years. Seriously, one of the best divers on the planet. And I remember speaking with Chris and showing Chris this diagram. And I said to Chris, I said, when you get below the surface of the water, say you're 10 meters down, what's it like? And Chris said, it's still. Still. And then he recalled this story about, I think, Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, mate, you're out in the Philippines and you'd gone under the water to do some work, and you looked up and you said the surface had gone really, really stormy. Like you could see the waves crashing in, and your boat was being pushed. It was only just holding on to its mooring because up on the surface, a storm had come in. And Chris had to abandon his work, get back to the boat so the boat could go back to wherever it resided. They had to get out of there because on the surface, this storm had come in and the surf was just so rough, and there were lads on the boat. And Chris, underneath the water, in the stillness, didn't realize what was taking place on the surface. The choppiness, these massive waves that had come rolling in and started to push the boat and threaten the lives of his mates. You see, wherever you go, there's stillness underneath the surface of the waves. The waves only appear at the surface. The turbulence only appears at surface level of the ocean. Okay. With that in mind, all these waves, I've written some things on here. I'm going to read them out, as many as I can be bothered to read out. I've written Thai, question mark. Fancy Thai? Fancy pizza? Fancy tea or coffee? I've put anxiety. I've put the wife, the husband, the kids, rich, wealthy, poor, not so wealthy. I've put the climate, global climate, the weather, true, false, right, wrong, work, past, future somewhere, future, politics, suicide on there somewhere.
Why are your peas like peas today?
Pardon? No, it's P-O.
No, but that one, pizza.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that. Suicide. Put suicide on there because, you know, many people come to us and they tell us that they've had the suicide thought. There's a man not on here now, he's called Paul, but he was on one of our retreats, and when I explained this diagram, he rung me up at the next break. He's a Mackham lad from Sunderland, and he explained to me that I didn't know anything about him, and I didn't know that he'd attempted to take his life 2 weeks before coming on this retreat, that he didn't want to come on. It was only because his girlfriend was showing it that he came on it, and he just thought was in his words, navel gazers, which I thought, yeah, has he been watching me or what? And when I did this diagram, he rung me up and I thought he was giving me a bit of a bollocking. And then he said, I've never heard something more true in my entire life. He said, I won't be here this afternoon. I'm going for a walk. And that man heard something. He heard something about that helped to set him free. So I put suicide on there. Okay, all of these are waves. These are waves. Do you fancy a cup of tea or coffee? What should we have for tea tonight? Chinese? Do you fancy fish and chips? Fancy pizza? Should we have Thai? Is everybody looking? Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. God, they can see right through me. I'm not good enough. Oh, the future looks terrible. That thing that took place in the past, I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. I've got work tomorrow. I'm at work. Actually, it's not that bad. I'm at work. It's bloody terrible. My wife is doing my head in. My wife's wonderful. Isn't she wonderful? Aren't I so lucky? My husband, I wish he'd change. That's a common one Jen and I get. Even Jenny. I'm not going to go into that. I wish he'd change. My husband would be so much better if he thought like me. My husband's wonderful. They're attractive. They're not very attractive. Oh, the climate, what's going to happen to this planet? Whatever. The weather always makes me feel good or bad. All these waves that take place within our consciousness. If you look at a thought, what you'll notice is it comes and goes. Have you thought the same thought your whole life? Have you thought the same thought all day? Have you thought the same thought for the last 5 minutes? Take a moment, have a look. Have your thoughts arisen and then left? Like a wave. Have you noticed your thoughts? They flow through. They're not static. Your experience changes. My experience has changed an awful lot today. Throughout the day, I've gone through all different kinds of states of being. I haven't stayed in one state of being all day. Even when I had chronic depression, I didn't stay in chronic depression all day. There were moments I forgot. There was moments when I was at work just minding my own business and I didn't notice, but my depression had vanished. I had no anxiety. I wasn't angry about anything. There was times when I laughed. When I put on a funny film and I laughed. Where's my depression wave at that point when I'm laughing, finding this humorous? Where's my depression gone? Doesn't exist. Each one of these things appears different. The suicide thought. What time is it? What's the weather like tomorrow in Alicante? It's all made of the same thing. Every single wave on the ocean is made of water. Every single thought, experience we have is created of thought. It's all made of thought. The suicide thought, the depression thought, the anxiety thought is exactly the same force as what time is it? Where's the kids at? What are they up to? They've gone quiet. Oh, they go quiet. I better go and check. They're usually up to something no good. It's exactly the same thing as politics, your idea of what politics is made of. It's made of what kind of biscuit should we have? Where should we go for a cup of coffee? Should we go for a cup of coffee here? Should we go for a cup of coffee there? Do you want some cake? The suicide thought. the anxiety thought, the I'm not good enough thought, is exactly the same thing. Just a different expression of the same force. And we have very, very much come to the conclusion that it's in the studying of the waves that the magic is found. But the problem is, the moment you study a wave, what does it do? You start creating waves about that wave. What about this I'm not good enough thought? I'm not good enough. You know, I'm not, there's people that are better than me. You know, and if I work harder at myself, I'll become better. I need to keep working. I reckon if I keep working, by this time next year, I'm going to be a totally different person. I've really got to work on myself. I've got to work on myself. Okay. When we focus our attention on the thought, what happens? Our attention on the thought creates more waves about that wave. You draw attention to it, and it manifests the reality that amplifies that initial wave and makes it look more fixed and real. Now, all these waves, and we all have different waves. We all have different waves about every single subject. Okay. Another word for all those waves is the ego. That we think creates our identity. The past, who we've perhaps been in the past, who we thought we were in the past, what we believe, that creates our ego. That's what's called the ego. It's what creates the character. It's what creates the personality. Ego in Latin simply means I. Nothing kind of sinister. It simply means I. It's what creates the impression of me. It's what creates the illusion of myself. Because go looking for yourself, and what do? You start thinking. Oh, well, Dave. Oh, let's start with Dave. Dave. Well, my name Dave is just a word that was given to me by my mother and father. It's just a word. It's a noise. A word is a noise, or it's a group of symbols or whatever, shapes. I'm not a noise. I'm not a shape. Okay, well, what else could I decide about Dave? Well, I'm 45 and, oh, hang on, but I was 44 last year and that looked real, and I'm 46 next year. And what is age? What is time? Is time actually real? Well, I'm a 3 principles facilitator, but I used to be a tree surgeon. Well, that can change. That's not who I am. You start to look at your identity and look at these thoughts that you've assumed were actually yourself. Because if you look at the impression that you carry about yourself, you'll realize it's actually just a ball of thoughts based on the past. Krishnamurti said that the ego is a ball of memories. The identity of who we think we are is a bunch of memories. Now, that memory may be from 2 seconds ago. It may be from this morning. It may be from 10 years ago. It's a wave. It's a bunch of waves. And this is what we have studied. This is what we're mesmerized by. We are absolutely mesmerized by our waves. We're constantly trying to fix our waves. I don't want this thought anymore. I don't want this thought anymore. That thought that I had, I don't want it anymore. That thought hurts me. That thought, blah, blah, blah. Constantly trying to fix this. And what do? We go to war with this. Oh, that bloody thought. I mustn't think it again. I'm so stupid. We go to war with this, with this. What happens when you walk out into the ocean to try and stop a wave? How would you try and stop a wave? Push it back into the water. Stop being turbulent. Come on, water. Stop it. Stop it. Stop being turbulent. What? Stop being turbulent, water. Splashing around, creating more and more waves. That's what we do to ourselves, thinking that trying our capacity, our idea that we should be beating our waves into submission or beating our waves away somehow is creating peace and calm on the surface. Of course it doesn't. If an individual goes to war with their own mind, who's the winner? And why are we going to war with our own mind? Why? Because we have a misunderstanding about what it is. Why are we going to war with our thoughts? Well, because we have a misunderstanding about what they are. Why are we going to war with our feelings? Because we don't understand them. Why are we going to war with our reality, our personal reality? Why are we trying to fight it? Why are we trying to change it? Because we fear it. Because we're uncomfortable with it. And this is all because we misunderstand the nature of life. We misunderstand the nature of reality, same thing. We misunderstand the nature of experience, same thing. 3 different ways to describe exactly the same thing. We've studied this to a blue in the face. When we are talking about the power of thought, we're not interested in the waves. You can always produce a new wave. There are infinite. Think about it. Is there an end to the possibility of wave patterns on an ocean? No. There's an infinite amount of possibilities of wave pattern on an ocean. So would it make sense to try and put an end to waves? Would it make sense to constantly try and study the wave in order to make sense of what it is? It's too late. The moment the wave has taken form, it's too late. That's what we've been doing. We've been studying the too lateness of life till we're blue in the face, till we've driven ourselves mad. Everything we've experienced up until now is too late. It's gone. Done. It was a creation of our mind. It's a creation of experience. Everything we experience is experience. But that experience is created from consciousness. The moment it's created, it's too late. You can't change a thought. It's impossible to change a thought. 100% impossible to ever change a thought. Because the moment it's been thought, it's immediately in the past. It's gone. You can't change it. It's taken place. It's happened. It's done. Why change it? Why, with the idea that we can change our thoughts, is buying into the illusion of time. Time doesn't exist. There is no past. The past doesn't exist anywhere on the face of the earth. It's a memory.
I think when we're in the townships out in South Africa working, the thing that the lady said that made her feel so powerful was that knowing you can't change a thought, but you don't have to act on it.
Yep.
That was a thing that really woke her up. So you
Yep.
can't change it, but with awareness, you don't have to act on it, where she used to blindly act on it.
When we're talking about thought, we're not drawing attention to our thinking. It's in the drawing attention to our thinking where we get really, really tangled up. Why? Because the mind will create another thought. The mind is infinite potential. The mind will create another thought and another thought and another thought. It's what the mind is designed to do. It is designed to think. It's meant to think. That's why it does it. But if an individual can realize that these waves, well, they're all the same thing. Experience only has one source. It's all the same thing. Suddenly you start to become aware of something far more important. And that is something that is truth, something that does not come and go. In science, if they find a constant, apparently that's one of the most exciting things to science, because they've got a constant, a datum by which they can compare everything to. There's not many. One constant is the ocean. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what we're thinking. It's born from the ocean of mind within ourselves. It's born from the ocean of consciousness. It's born from the ocean of thought. Letting the dog out. Jenny might have to go in a few minutes because Lucia's back. That ocean of self, that ocean of self is what has been spoken about for millennia, for guiding people back into that space within themselves. Without the ocean, there can be no wave. No wave emerges. No wave emerges without the ocean, without the water. The ocean must exist for the wave to become apparent. The ocean of total freedom that lies at the heart of all people is the essence of who and what we actually are. You cannot escape it. It's never gone anywhere. It's always been present. From this ocean of freedom, we can create any reality. We can create hell, and we can create heaven. We can create an exciting place to live, or we can create a boring place to live. I don't know about anybody else. I go through all kinds of experiences. Sometimes I get fed up with something. Sometimes I end up in the dark spot that just seems like I could never get out of it. Sometimes I've experienced love so deep, I think it's going to shatter me. Sometimes I've felt like everybody's looking at me and worried and like I'm just not getting life right and people are so much better than me. But all of this was created from the same space. It's all created from within myself. It's all an illusion of the ocean of freedom within ourself, mind, consciousness, thought. There's no limitation placed upon those. There is no limitation. There is no limitation upon the power of thought. The power of thought, the ocean. The power of mind, the ocean. Power of consciousness, the ocean. Source, as some people call it. Source. Some people call it God. Some people call it the true self. Sometimes I call it the now. Why the now? Why is it people who discover the now, who have a deep realization about the now, they have a spiritual awakening? Why is that? Because they find the source of life. Anybody who wants to find God, stop looking at the past, stop looking at the future. You won't find it there. The moment of creation is right here, right now, and always has been and always will be. There is only the now. There is only the ocean. How it shows up, entirely up for grabs. Entirely up for grabs. But every single experience that we have is all coming from the same place. It's all the same thing in a different disguise. Every single wave on the ocean, big or small, tsunami or ripple, it's all water. Every single experience we have, horrific, tragic, God, I can't take life anymore. Joy and peace and excitement, anxiety, it's all the same thing in a different disguise. When we realize that, you realize it's actually not the only thing I'm actually afraid of is something that I created. I created this for myself. Why? I don't know. Because perhaps it's a habit. Perhaps it's just something that we've already done. But once you know that this is how it works, this ocean of freedom is within ourself. You are free to create. There is nothing outside of you creating your feelings. There is nothing outside of you creating your experience. There is nothing outside of you creating thoughts. This is entirely within. And this is the only thing we're ever experiencing, the ocean of self. Another word you could call it? Soul. The soul. The pure consciousness that is the soul that animates life into reality. This is the only thing that's ever taking place. This ocean is not man-made. It's not man-made. And it's interesting because when our mind gets quiet, when the waves start to settle down, this peace emerges. That's why people meditate. That's why people go for walks. I need to go for a walk. I'm in a bit of a head fuck. I'm going to go for a walk. They go for a walk. The mind settles down, perhaps. The stillness that is always present, no matter where you go on the planet, the stillness of the ocean is always present. The only thing that takes away from the stillness, the peace that we're all searching for, is our overwaving, our constant thinking, trying to figure everything out. And the moment our minds quieten down, the moment you forget the problem disappears. Interesting, isn't it? The problem only exists when you think it. So I just wanted to do this diagram just to highlight a couple of things. When we are talking about thought, we're not talking about the thinkings. We're talking about the fundamental power that everybody on earth is endowed with. You're endowed with an infinite potential within ourselves. Why infinite potential? Why is thought infinite potential? Will we ever run out? Are we ever going to run out of thought? Is there any end to our capacity to create? No. No, we're always going to be learning, no matter for how long we exist for. We're always going to learn. With this world in 1,000 years' time will look so different, but we'll still be learning. Why? Because it's infinite. It's no end. There's no end. There's no end. So within ourself, we are not this ego. We are not this limitation of waves. We're not this limitation of thoughts. We are, in fact, this infinite self. This infinite self. You will never run out of thoughts. You will never run out of potentials. There's your proof. When we discover that's who and what we actually are, that starts to make sense, when the penny starts to drop, this all takes care of itself. Don't worry about that. You don't need to fix the waves. The waves were an illusion anyway. Don't worry about your waves. Don't even be afraid of your waves. You don't need to be afraid of your own thoughts. I have all kinds of thoughts. They used to trouble me. Now, I'm all right with thinking anything. When the thought comes in, I don't make it about, oh, am I a bad person? And trust me, if I was to tell you some of my thoughts, am I a bad person? I know I'm not a bad person. I'm a human being and I have some frigging bonkers thinking sometimes. But it's not about changing our waves. It's about discovering that there is something beyond our waves, before our waves. There has to be in order for the wave to exist. There has to be. I don't know about you, but I'm now 45 years old. When I was 5, I waved very, very differently. Cheers, Dan. Dan's just bought the diagram. All right, glad. Cheers. Cheers, Dan. I waved very, very differently to what I wave now. But I am still here. I was here when I was 5. I was here when I was 6. I was here when I was 7. All these different experiences I've gone through as I've grown up, for want of a better word. I never grew up. Bullshit. But I've gone through all these different experiences. Some of them have been tragic. Some of them have been horrific. Some of them been wonderful. But they've all been from within. Every single experience has come from within myself. And that's the only thing I've ever actually truly experienced. How can I experience anything outside of the consciousness that is me? How could I? I couldn't be aware of it. Therefore, I couldn't experience it. Therefore, I've never experienced anything outside of myself. Everything I experience is from within myself, even the car crash. The only place I experience it is from within myself. How do I know the car crash happened? Because my inner self becomes aware of it, then makes up a story. We're storytelling beings. Each of us is telling a different story continuously. When we wake up and we realize that the stories that we have been telling, we made up. I made up my depression, my chronic depression. Some people would probably say to me, but Dave, you can't have had real depression, Dave. You can't have had real depression, because if you've got real depression, you can't get rid of it. Not true. Depression is a story created by the mind. I'm sorry. People would look at the chemical balance. Oh, it's to do with chemicals. Another thing they said to me. Well, why was my brain producing those chemicals? Look at your realities. Look at your dreams. I was diagnosed with chemical imbalances of the brain. Too much adrenaline, too much cortisol. And they were right compared to the average and compared to other chapters of my life. Yes, I was probably flooded with too much of those compounds or whatever they are, those chemicals. But I can produce those chemicals in my sleep when I'm safely tucked up in bed. If I fall in my dreams, my body doesn't know the difference between if I'm falling in real life or if I'm falling in my dream. If I'm safely tucked up in bed, my body doesn't know the difference. If I fall in a dream, my heart pounds. My adrenaline is released. My cortisol is released. My breathing starts to... I stiffen up, bracing myself for impact. My body doesn't know the difference between the dream state whilst I'm asleep and the awake state whilst my senses are enlivened. Why is that? Because it's the same operating system taking place in the sleep state as in the awake state. In the sleep state, we know fine well we are dreaming, and that dream therefore must be thought within consciousness. What else could a dream be? It's an experience that you feel. It's visceral. Don't know, as a young man, I used to have some quite embarrassing dreams. Sometimes I'd wake up and it was pretty friggin' real.
Dave the oversharer.
Dave the overshare. Well, we're all human. Part of life. But the body doesn't know the difference. Why is that? Because in the awake state, you've got exactly the same means by which we experience reality taking place. The only difference is our senses are enlivened, and therefore we assume it's more real. But it's the same process taking place: consciousness, thought, creating reality, creating this dream of life. If it wasn't my dream of life, everybody would see the same reality as me. Everybody would be interested in the same things. But Not very many people are. Who else is interested in dowsing stone circles? Not very many people. Metal detecting? Probably not very many people. Felting little birds and stuff out of wool? Probably not very many people. But you're interested in what you're interested in because it's your dream. You worry about what makes sense to you to worry about. Might not make sense to me to worry about because it's not my dream. But your dream looks real and my dream looks real. When I'm asleep and I'm dreaming, most of the time I'm not aware I'm asleep and dreaming. I just think it's real reality. And this is the thing, when we wake up from the already enlivened senses awake state, as in the daytime state for human beings, the not in bed asleep state, when we awaken, when we're already awake, you realize it is akin to, it's a dream. Reality is a dream, and it's our dream. And once you realize it's a dream, you're like Jenny. I become aware it's a dream. How do I want to dream and what do I want to create? And you start to create a life that is more coherent with how you want to live your life. That's where the freedom lies. The freedom doesn't lie in the potential. A wave is a potential. The freedom lies in the infinite potential. Discovering your infinite potential. This isn't a myth. This isn't some funny kind of belief. This isn't some new age thinking. This is a fact that we are made of infinite potential, collapsing our realities down into singular potentials that look real, and we assume this is all we are. Poor little me. Little islands. Ocean of freedom is who and what we truly are. Ego, the waves, is the illusion. But it's your illusion. It's my illusion. It's my dream. We've all been given, one of my favorite Sydney Banks quotes is, you've been given the gift to come into this world and create whatever reality you so wish. There is no greater gift in the universe than that. My favorite Sid Banks quotes. You've been given the gift to come into this world and create whatever reality you so wish. There is no greater gift in this universe than that. I can't think of one. All our beliefs, all these ideas of who and what we were, it was a wave. It felt real, yes, but that's what they do. The feeling state, Jenny calls the feeling the visible state, the visible face of thought. Because more often than not, you're not aware of what you're thinking, but you feel how you're thinking about something. You feel if you're thinking negative about something. You feel if you're thinking optimistically. You feel it. Thought and feeling are not separate. As you wave, so you feel. So
I think we've done this diagram before, and one of the things that came up is someone would say they get stuck in one wave, and it's as if they felt like that was like held in time. They were only experiencing one wave, and then we asked them questions about their life. Well, so that's the only thing you're ever thinking about. But what about when you're hungry, or when you're watching something, or you hurt yourself, or like one wave can seem like it dominates our life. And so we kind of identify with that and say that that is all we experience, but we're never stuck, because despite ourselves, we are always in a flow state. We're always in a new moment. So even if it seems like the same thought keeps coming up, it's still in a new moment. It's never the same. The old one is stale, it's coming up again. So we're never stuck with the thought that we've had before, because the nature of ocean is that it produces waves. When we identify less with these waves and more with the ocean, we get less bothered by the waves that come up, and we notice the flow. I think the question around it that time was about, they don't have the flow. I get stuck. But the nature of ocean is that it flows and it moves.
regardless.
But we will focus on one and that seem like it's our entire reality. And we don't appreciate or notice the time when it's not. And the other thing that really stood out for me when you did this diagram is when we don't know this, we will look to other things to help us feel better. So when we don't know this about ourselves, that we don't have to be afraid of our waves, we will look to external sources to try and feel better. So people use drugs, alcohol, chocolate, shopping, distraction of any kind. We just want to feel better. We're just looking outside ourselves to feel better. And it can appear like sometimes those things work. But all that's happened is that our focus has shifted away from whatever we were thinking about, and we get involved with the shopping or whatever. But when we're in misunderstanding, we will look for external things to feel better. So we become a victim again. Because if we can't then get that thing or do that thing, we don't feel like we can be better. But that's totally innocent, which is why it's so important to start realizing the ocean and identifying that as self, that as I, rather than any of these things about ourselves or our character. Because if we get lost in ego and identify as that, there will always be something that we need. But when we identify as ocean or source or mind or consciousness, automatically we realize everything we need is within.
Yeah. The waves, going back to what we said right at the beginning, the waves come and go. Okay. You will never find yourself in a wave. It comes and it goes. You don't come and go. They flow. They're in a constant state of movement. They all appear different. This is why our experience changes constantly. They're all made of water. The waves are the illusion of the truth. The illusion only exists because of the truth. When you become aware of the truth, you will come back to the illusion, but it's your illusion. You know it's an illusion. You will still feel, you will still be a human being, apart from you discovered this other aspect of yourself. That was always there. It had to be there in order for you to exist. The ocean has had meteorites hit it. The oceans have been frozen on this planet. The oceans have had nuclear weapons dropped on them. They've been polluted. They've never been destroyed to this day. You cannot destroy it. It cannot be destroyed. We, the true self, the real self, not the illusion ego self, that dies. Trust me, that dies. The true self doesn't die. The ocean never dies. The only thing that dies is that's temporary, the waves. And memory is a wave. Imagination is a wave. Future and past are waves, just like pizza or chips.
I guess as well, the same as the ocean, there is depth to it that we have never experienced. And we're,
absolutely.
they are discovering different things, but unlike the actual ocean, it's infinite, the depth to which we can see and feel and realize the ocean.
Yeah.
We're scratching the surface of something so huge. And that it's, for me, the exciting thing. I'm like, wow. And I remember saying at the time, if I never see anything else, what I've found now I'm grateful for, and that's enough. Because I went from one world to a completely different world, and it was so much brighter and so much more beautiful and had so many good people in it.
Yeah.
But the gift has been the depth to which I've seen as it goes on. And I know I'm scratching the surface.
Me too. Me too.
And I was going to say earlier, when you were talking about separate realities, my mum and dad love to go out for tiffin, is what they call it. And me, Dave, mum and dad said to Lucia, we're going to go out for tiffin. And she's like all excited, we're going out for tiffin. And I'd made her some tiffin. So we go out, and then we got back in the car and she went, did we drink any tiffin? And you realise that she's got no idea what we're talking about. So suddenly she's like, did I drink the tiffin? Like, what is tiffin? But we all kind of act as if everyone knows what we mean. And it's so obvious with Lucia, because she'll often ask, but we don't realise and see in relationships, in friendships, how you think the other person knows what you're talking about. And so often things are lost in translation.
Yeah.
But it was just something the other day that made us absolutely die.
And when we were in Bury St Edmunds, we were going to meet Lewin and was it Ishka as well at Juice Bros, the juice bar where you go and get juices, and like, well, Luce, we're doing this, and then we're going to go and meet Lewin and Ishka at the juice bar. Okay. We're at juice bar yet? No. We go to juice bar? Yeah. Juice bar? Yeah. Yes, Luce. Juice bar. Juice bar. Juice bar. Anyway, we get this juice, and then she looks at me and goes, so Daddy, yes, has this got juice bar in it? No, you're in the juice bar, Luce. This is the juice bar. Yeah. Bless her.
I think it's so easy to think that we're all speaking the same language and that we all understand. And I think through this conversation, I've realised I ask for more information.
Yeah.
And like we do that with one another, just naturally. You have to ask for more information because we recognise we see different worlds.
Yeah.
We see things so differently. It's really helpful to get more information.
It really helps your communication. You know, when you realise we are literally all seeing a different seascape continuously in every single moment, it allows you to get more curious about the individual. I know I cannot see your reality and you cannot see mine. Let's talk. Let's talk. There are as many oceans as there are people. Or should I say, there is one ocean with as many expressions as there are people. But if you imagine it like everybody is an ocean within themselves, infinite ocean, it's the easiest way to kind of get a sense of it. So everybody is an infinite ocean, and everybody is waving in their own unique wave pattern in any given moment. The world starts to make sense. You start to understand why there's war, because people believe their reality is real. They believe their wave pattern is the truth. But there are as many wave patterns as there are human beings, plus all the animal kingdoms, plant kingdoms, fungal kingdoms, bacterial kingdoms, all the other kingdoms, elemental kingdoms.
Kingdoms we haven't discovered.
And kingdoms we haven't discovered. All the other kingdoms, everything is endowed. Trees are endowed with the power of thought. Talk about that. That'll be coming up over the next few days. But when you realize there are as many realities as there are things walking the face of this planet, or not even walking, you start to realize that this reality that we encounter is something, that reality is something far grander than anything we ever thought. We've lived and acted as though there is only one reality to what we all see, and we move through this reality, and this reality bombards us with things and information and stuff. But then to wake up and realize, oh no, it's 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Reality moves through me. I create my own experience of life, and that is the only reality I can ever know, is whatever I'm creating in that moment. Suddenly you know that the answer to every single world problem is for people to discover who and what they actually are. That's how we heal this world. Because at the moment we're running around in ego. What is that? It's the innocent misunderstanding of the ocean mistaken in itself for waves. Is for the spirit, the soul, mistaken in itself for the past, our achievements, our failures, our could have done betters, our blah, 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 our stories, our stories that we tell about ourselves. Is like the ocean mistaken in itself for waves. I'm just these little waves, poor little me. We heal the world by awakening people to the illusion of life. Because when you've got this illusion of life, you can allow the next person to have their illusion. They're allowed to have their reality. If there are as many realities as there are people walking the face of this planet, whose reality is the true reality? Who is the one person who sees the true reality? Or does it not work like that? All right. It's 6 o'clock UK time. We're going to take an hour and a half. I'm going to take an hour and a half's break. So UK back at 7:30. International back in an hour and a half. Hope you can make it. All right, everyone.
And if people want to type anything in the chat, questions or things
Yeah.
they'd like us to talk to, but then also after the break, we are going to open it up to questions.
Yes. So questions, reflections, and observations when we get back after an hour and a half's break. Go and get breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Put the kids to bed, whatever. All right, everyone. Loads of love.